Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot. Even if the Lakers don't make a trade, I still think we have a shot to come out the West. Like if AD and LeBron are healthy, Russ, I mean, at the end of the day, you have it. Look, I've said it countless times. Like if you could jump into a time machine, jump into the future, and come back, and if you said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, dude, the Lakers won the championship," like I don't think anyone would be that surprised because everyone would be like, "Oh, well, you still had LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, right?" Like I don't think anyone would be like, "There's no way, I don't believe it," all of that stuff. Like,
no, it's not that far reach. I mean,
yeah.
Depending on who we go against in the finals, because getting through the West is not the problem. Like we just talked about, it's not really the problem.
Boston and Milwaukee are the two teams that I really worry about. Like I'm really not worried about anyone in the West. Like, does that mean that we'll just run through the West or whatever? No, not necessarily. Like I think there are teams that could be tough matchups or could just be tough. Period. But I do like our chances in the West. I think the West is so wide open. All the top teams are the young teams, which I've said it. It's the same reason I said the Warriors were just going to beat all those teams because they don't have the experience, right? So when things start going bad for them, they panic, right? They don't have the trial and error of doing it. And like, they don't have just that much talent to where it's like they're just so good. Like, even if like they are young, like they're just, it's not the Warriors with KD, right? Where it's just like they're unbeatable. So, and when it comes to the playoffs, the game slows down. The little ins and outs become more prominent. Your holes become more exposed, which is why I want the Lakers to make a trade. Like so many people are like, Lakers don't need a trade. They're good, all that stuff. And I'm like, but the Lakers have holes already. Those holes only get bigger in the playoffs. Because every team is going to get to see, and every matchup becomes harder and harder because teams are going to be able to adjust more and more and more to exploit those holes. So, but at the end of the day, you still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You still have two top 10 players on one team. There's not many teams, if any, that can say that, right? And then you have arguably the sixth man of the year in Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, who's really kind of found a nice little balance of playmaking and scoring. And I expect him to continue to improve as we go on. Now, if you find a deal that makes sense for us, I still think you make that trade. But you don't just trade Russ just to trade Russ, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talks about how, from other teams' perspectives, the idea of Russ still hasn't changed. They want one first-round pick to take on Russ. That makes zero sense if you're the Lakers. Zero. Because Russ is not a negative to you. And the reason that these teams want to take on and are willing to take on Russ's contract is they have their own personal motives that they want. Whether it's just the assets or they want to unload salary or they want to, whatever it is, they have their own personal benefits in it. Like, example, the Spurs, which I guess we could transition to that. So the Spurs trade, for example, there was a report from Spurs side, it's Air Alamo, and they talked about how the Lakers and the Spurs have, discussed trade conversation. I mean, the Lakers and Spurs have been linked together since the offseason, right? But they talked about how, you could get how the Spurs still want a first-round pick just for taking on Russ. It makes no sense, right? Because right now, the Spurs are valuing Josh Richardson and Doug McDermott both as first-round picks. That value is insanely high for them. It makes zero sense, right? Jakob Poeltl,
crazy.
Jakob Poeltl, they want 2 firsts for. Now, Jakob Poeltl, I think, is worth the first if he wasn't an expiring contract.
Not 2.
Yeah, I don't think he's worth 2. But, I mean, in the way that the big man market's been going this season, maybe. But he's an expiring contract. So, how many teams are going to take the risk on Jakob Poeltl? And most teams that are good already have a center. So, it's even the Lakers, they have Anthony Davis. And Thomas Bryant has been fantastic. So, why do you really need to get another center? My thing is, if you could get Jakob Poeltl, he makes sense. You can run him. He's never had a problem coming off the bench in spots if you want him to come off the bench. Not just that, but if you sign him to an extension, then you have him as a contract to move forward. But the biggest thing is that the Spurs also need to get to the cap floor. They're behind in the cap floor. Now the punishment isn't really a punishment. All that happens is that money gets dispersed to all the players. But if you can finagle some stuff and make some stuff work and get some free assets in the process, why wouldn't you? Because you have to pay that money regardless. Realistically, it should be, Russell Westbrook, 1 first and 2, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, right? because we do have Chicago second this year. So maybe you give, the 2027 unprotected first. You give, 2 second-round picks for McDermott, Josh Richardson, and Jakob Poeltl. Then maybe you could take Jakob Poeltl and flip it. On my channel, I did a trade where you could make it work to where maybe you could flip Jakob Poeltl into Miles Turner if you wanted to do that. I personally am not big on a center, but Jakob Poeltl would just kind of be an add-on. Or you take the trade exception, right? The trade exception, which would be 20 if you don't take Poeltl. The trade exception is like 23 million, 25 million, something like that, crazy like that. So if you could get that trade exception, well, now maybe you could use that trade exception to go and then get some pieces or two. That's something that I think could help as well. But what are your thoughts?
No. I will say too, and I'm not as big on a center anymore. I was really, really heavy on let's go get Turner. I thought it was a good idea, but I've been watching Bryant over these last few games. No, not anymore. Just because right now it doesn't make any sense. If he can continue this play, especially when AD comes back, if he can continue this play, I don't see why we need another center. Not at the moment. You know what I mean? I also don't think we should go get another just guard or a small guard because that's not going to do anything for us. I mean, unless you're just such of an insane scorer, unless you, like you said, unless you got a Kyrie, which I'm not considering Kyrie super small, but still, unless you got a Kyrie or something like that, just someone who's going to just offset it with the scoring load, it doesn't really, it would make more sense. But what you're saying is that you're saying even without a trade, you think that we could get through the West. This team right now,
this team
add AD back in, AD not injured, we're getting through the West. Well, obviously not guaranteed, but
I wouldn't bet on it, but yeah.
No, I mean, just seeing how we fared up against the better teams. Let's look at the top teams in the West this year. We got the Nuggets, we got the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Mavericks. See, my thing is, I can speak for the Nuggets. I can't speak for the other teams because I don't know who we beat the other teams this year, but I know even just look at how we matched up against the Nuggets. They're the best team in the West this year. I don't really think that we're going to have that much trouble getting through. Now, I do think that we're going to have a few game sevens for sure.
I mean, that's playoff basketball, right?
Yeah,
you're gonna have the good games, you're gonna have the bad games. I mean, you're right. Let's go through. So the Nuggets, we always just seem to have the Nuggets number, and I still believe we have the Nuggets number. Right, I think if we have a healthy LeBron and AD, I think we beat the Nuggets. Grizzlies,
what are we 2-1 or 2-2 against them right now?
Yeah, we're 2-2 against them. But you got to think one of those games we won without Anthony Davis essentially because that's the game he got hurt. The other game, one of the games we lost was when we were terrible and we hadn't figured it out yet. And then the other games we won. So that's kind of where we're at. And then the last game was without LeBron, without AD, without So
exactly,
that was the big thing. So, I'm not worried about the Nuggets. The Grizzlies, I still think are too young and they're not there yet. And I think that they're too Ja reliant. And I don't know if he's the best player on a championship team. That's just my opinion. Pelicans, I think Pelicans.
Grizzlies are overhyped to me. Just my opinion. I think John Morant is overhyped. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not a good player. I don't get the hype about John Morant. He's good. He really is. He's like a enhanced Jimmy Butler or something like that. You know what I mean? Just by pure force and athleticism, he's gonna go get you a bucket. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
He's the best. He's kind of like a modern Derrick Rose, right? Just pure athleticism,
explosive,
just explosive. All of those things. He's kind of like that. And I don't know. I mean, even with Chicago, I mean, there were a lot of questions could Derrick Rose lead? Is he the best player on a championship team? But the Pelicans, I think might be the toughest because Zion is a lot to handle. CJ McCollum, he has experience.
Zion, if he could stay in the game, I mean,
Zion could stay healthy. But I mean, CJ McCollum, he's a guy that could go off if you need him to. But he also has experience. He's been to the Western Finals, all that stuff. Brandon Ingram, I'm not really too concerned with. I like Brandon Ingram. I think Brandon Ingram's good, but I don't think
he's like a Kuzma. At this point, I would love to have him back on the I would love to have him back on the team. But
I think he's good, not great, right? Yeah. And then other than that, I just think again their youth and experience isn't a problem. Dallas, I think we beat Dallas. I think if you took Luka off of Dallas, Dallas might be the worst team in the league. They have they don't really have a lot of talent. It's crazy.
No, that's true. See, and that's what sucks about having such a star reliant team. Like that, and that's what sucks. Because once that star, like, if you're so reliant, like, you can't do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if the Lakers were so like LeBron heavy, I guarantee we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. Like, the Western Conference Finals wouldn't even be a thing. Like,
so again, Mavericks, not really worried about. Kings, I think, are too young. Clippers, I don't believe in until you prove to me otherwise. The Suns are falling off a cliff. The Warriors are always the Warriors, so they're going to be tough, right? And very likely.
See, the Suns are the wild card this year. I'll tell you what, the Suns are the freaking wild, because we don't know what's going to happen with the Suns. We don't know if they're going to play great during the playoffs. We don't know, like, because
here's the interesting question.
That's a team that could shock everybody. That's a team that I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on.
I'm really not worried about the Suns, if I'm being honest. But I mean, look, here's a good, not at all. But here's a good question.
They had our number 2 years ago.
Dude, the last time we played them in the playoffs, we should have won that series and went to another finals. If AD doesn't get hurt, we win that series.
Well, yeah, no, fair enough.
We were up 2 games to 1. It was looking like we were about to go up 3 games to 1. LeBron's making Jay Crowder look like his son, and it's just absolutely embarrassing.
That matchup was funny to watch.
It was absolutely embarrassing. We were just running through them, and then Anthony Davis got hurt, and it just gave the Suns new life. Like, okay, good. And then LeBron James just didn't have enough talent to keep them alive. But yeah, the real question is, if the Lakers do get in, which team does it? Because I don't think the Kings are going to fall off. So that means realistically,
like, which team doesn't make the?
Yeah, because I mean, look at it right now.
I'm not going to say the Jazz. I'm going to leave the Jazz out of that. The Jazz are for sure getting in. For sure.
So here's the thing. So because there's only 8 teams that get to. I'm not talking about the play-in. I'm talking about the playoffs, right?
No, I know. Yeah.
So let's say the Lakers make the 8th seed, right? That means realistically, one of the Clippers, the Suns, and the Warriors are probably not in the playoffs. So which of those teams are not in the playoffs?
Or
I think it's the Suns.
Could the Kings fall so much that the Kings won't be in there either? That's another.
I don't think they will, because they're young, they're hungry, they have a real opportunity.
But that's the thing. They had such a great beginning of the season.
They got a nice little cushion, right?
And mark my words, and this is where we're going to see them start to fall. I'm telling you, watch.
They're really good at home. I mean, maybe, but I don't like, because I think the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Nuggets definitely get in. I think those 3 teams
for sure.
I think those 3 teams are just too far away of everybody that they'll get.
Not the Mavs. And the Mavs, right? Yeah.